Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. and today I'm reviewing Empire's End from John D. Clare and Brotherwise Games. Empire's End is a reverse bidding game for 2 to 4 players in which players are bidding to not have the bad things happen to them. You see, in the game, you're going to be moving along this track until you get all the way to the end, at which point you'll add up all your scores. What you're going to be trying to do in the game is every single round something's going to happen depending on the track, most often bad things. You see, as you move this little time tracker to those little black spots, you're going to reveal a disaster that players are bidding not to get. In this case, this disaster is going to be affecting the 5th tile over here. So you can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, put down your fire marker to mark that currently you are bidding to not have your town destroyed. It's worth mentioning at this point that this setup is random, but it is the same for all players. So whatever you have is the same exact order for all the other players, although that can be changed as the game develops. Right about now, you're going to have the town over here, you're going to look at this disaster, and this disaster in particular requires food to be bid. You have to bid only food. They'll show you different little icons on them showing you which currencies you can spend, and coins are wild, so you can always spend coins. Players are going to go ahead behind the screen, and they're going to start bidding to not accept the disaster. Adding one from one player, adding again, going around and around the table, players bidding, paying into a pool of how to not take this disaster. Now, when you take this disaster, 2 things are going to happen. You're going to both have to burn down your town, but additionally, you're going to get the bottom card over here, so there is a slight upside in addition to all the goods on the tile at the same time. So right about now, eventually it gets to a point, it gets to your turn, and finally you decide, you know what? The pot is high enough, and I'm going to simply take those resources. Instead of paying, I'm going to take those resources, including whatever I paid, plus whatever else is there, and I'm going to take the disaster, and I'm going to burn down my town. My town is going to be burnt, which is not the best, but hey, you know what? There's opportunities to rebuild it. We'll get back to that later. I'm going to take this card and put it somewhere else in my tableau, trying to figure out where this will most help me out. I'm just going to go ahead and tuck it under military. No specific reason to do so, but we're going to do that. Sometimes there's more or less of a reason, depending on the card in question, but for right now, it goes over there. I have both built up my tableau and lost 20 points at the same time, but I do have more food than the other players, which will help me as the game progresses. You're going to continue moving this time tracker along, and this is where it's actually helpful, because right now, not only did I just get more food, but this food is actually going to let me pay in. You see, whenever you get to a green spot over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, you're going to go ahead and activate all the green abilities on your track. I can go ahead and grab a hammer. I can take a food. Up to 3 times, I can pay food in for gold, which just gives me more flexibility, so I'm definitely going to do that. There's no downside. I can count the gold as food anyway. Over here, I can go ahead and refresh some of the activated abilities of some of the cards that I have in play. Over here, I can go ahead and get trade in food for different resources. There's axes and hammers, and then I can get an axe, and that's going to be my green activation phase. I'll get all those items, I'll get all those benefits, I'll activate it, done. All players are doing the same, and our tableaus might be different depending on what we got. So for example, I have this economy card that I just got by taking that disaster. Other players may not have that. You're going to go ahead to the next disaster, go ahead and bid, and again, you have the same situation. This one's going to be an end game point. It's going to be giving us points at the end game for every single food we have, and so you're going to be going through these cards, trying to avoid the disasters, because every single time, right now, we're going to be going 6, 7, 8, 9, and you'd be losing this army. As you move further along, you're going to get to these little gray spots. In these gray spots, you have the opportunity to build and repair. You'll have the opportunity to build cards from your hand. Players are going to have a hand of cards, and you can go ahead and either sell those cards for coins, or alternatively, you can build them. And these are just less focused on disaster and more focused on the simple benefits. So for example, we have a card over here that wants to be, is going to give us a hammer for every road it's next to. That would be great if it's next to a road, but it would be better if we can put it next to a road, and later, or during this phase, we can actually use the industry over here to swap 2 tiles. So we can go ahead and swap the army and the road, so that now we're getting hammers for both those roads next to us. You can have the ability to manipulate your own board, which also means that as the game progresses, players might be bidding on a disaster on a tile that is different than theirs because you've rearranged your board. Lastly, we're going to get up to the war phase. Over here we have the wars. You're going to have 3 wars in the game. And when you have a war, you're going to flip over the top card of the war pile. And you're going to have to count up your swords, which are going to be the actual swords you have, plus any swords you contribute, plus any benefits you have. And then depending on which track you get over here, you're going to get different benefits. But additionally, not only are you going to get different benefits, if you have the most, you'll get the victory award. And if you lose, you'll have to deal with the upheaval as well. So that's going to be the victory, the military aspect of the game. You're going to repeat that process, mostly bidding over not taking disasters, but a few other things along the way, going through the build phase, building out the cards, trying to get your extra builds in, building out your tableau. You can't upgrade a card more than once until you've upgraded every other possible card. You'll have the opportunity to pay the repair costs during the build phase to restore a town, but you're limited in how often you can do that, so you have to factor in how much damage you're taking, how many hammers you have, and whether you can get away with rebuilding that thing that's worth 32 points, but it's going to cost you 12 hammers. Rinse and repeat until you get to the end of the game, and that is Empire's End. Which brings us to the review, starting off with ease of play. This is a fairly easy game to understand. The thing that's most complicated, if you haven't played a game with reverse bidding, such as No Thanks, then the reverse bidding takes a minute to actually understand what you're doing. The concept of not really bidding to get something, but bidding to not get something and eventually taking that pot, takes a second to understand that. Past that, for the most part, this is pretty simple. The iconography is pretty simple to follow, the rules are pretty simple to follow, the phase is pretty simple to follow. This is a very easy to teach, easy to play game. Plays in around 45 minutes to an hour, does depend on player count. It's 2 to 4 player game. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking, to begin with the reverse bidding. I like the reverse bidding. I haven't played it in many games, but I like the concept of reverse bidding, the concept of almost as a push your luck mechanism almost by default, because it's not about trying to see how high you can go, it's about trying to see how high the other players are going to go. It has that push your luck as you go ahead and just continue to contribute to the pot, adding a coin, adding a little food, adding a coin, continue to see the pot grow, and trying to establish, it may already be worth it to me. Maybe I want to see if it's worth it to you. Maybe I want to push the board one more time. I want to see how the game progresses. And manipulating your board is a fun thing to do. It's a huge part of the game for me. The ability to actually use these tiles to manipulate other areas on the board is huge, because what that effectively does is it gives you chances and opportunities where the area that the disaster is going to occur is different than the other players, although that's both a pro and a con. If you currently have a disaster on your 5-point army, and the other players have it on their 32-point city, you can push that pot longer than they can, just trying to accelerate the pain and eventually taking it, or watching them have a 32-point city crumble. The reverse of that is inherently if your 5-point city is in a different place than their 32-point, if your 5-point army is in a different place than their 32-point city, then the reverse can happen as well, and you can find yourself paying into that reverse pain pot as they sit there and watch gleefully while the pot piles up, and you just don't want to lose 32 points. And in general, the game has tableau building at the same time. You're going to be adding cards to your city over here, which will give you more abilities, more things, more military might, more building abilities, different things, endgame scoring. You're going to be building up your tableau across the course of the game. There aren't that many points where you're cashing in on the tableau. There's only 4 green production phases. There's only 3 building phases. There's only 3 army phases. But you are building into your tableau and building up what you can do and how you can do it as the disasters slowly accumulate across the course of the game. As far as what I don't like in the game, first of all, it doesn't feel the different currencies matter that much. It can matter at times. There are times where you sit there and you have, I only have hammers, I only have axes and all those things. But for the most part, the currency system didn't feel vastly varied. It feels like it's a thing there to add some degree of variety to the experience, but I didn't feel that incentivized to swap into one currency or the other most of the time. You have these abilities where you can pay into different currencies and try to swap it around. I never felt rewarded when I can turn food into hammers or whatnot. It felt like, okay, before I had food, now I have hammers. It didn't feel inherently better or that different. And there's not a lot of, more importantly I would say, there's not a ton of meat to the decision space. The game ultimately comes down to bidding on not acquiring these tiles. The whole entire game to me comes down to deciding when to cave and when to collect those disasters, when it'll be worthwhile to you, when the payoff will be there. And while that is a decision space, there wasn't a lot more to it. It didn't feel like it mattered that much where I put the rewards after. There are times where it does, but those times are usually fairly obvious. I didn't really feel a complex amount of decision space. It mostly came down to the bidding mechanism, which is not the end of the world, but it's this one focal decision point the entire game, and you're just going through that again and again and again, just trying to gamble on that push your luck reverse bidding mechanism. As far as I can see others not liking, this entire game is about managing pain. The entire game that you are playing in Empire's End is about managing not having bad things happen to you. Most people don't like bad things. In this game, you're going to be bidding and paying into having those bad things not happen, and sometimes you'll be losing resources, which is also a bad thing, and other times you'll be getting the bad thing, which is also a bad thing. So this entire game comes down to kind of accepting the fact that you have to deal with loss or lost points, either lost resources or lost points every single turn of the game, which may be something that you just don't find that inspiring. Yes, you are building up your city as you go. There are definitely things you're doing to improve your tableau, but the core decision space is about choosing the bad thing that will happen to you this particular turn. As far as final thoughts on Empire's End, first of all, it's worth noting that this is a prototype. All rules, components, and stuff subject to change. I'll have a link to the Kickstarter down below. But as far as final thoughts thoughts on this game. Overall, Empire's End is taking the reverse bidding of No Thanks, I think is the most commonly known reverse bidding game, and it's taking that and it's combining it with a civilization game, trying to give you this puzzle of how to build up or how to not watch your civilization fall at times. I overall like the core concept of the reverse bidding mechanism, but I don't think there's a ton more decision space around that. It mostly comes down to that one thing, so if you like that one thing, this will be a fun game. If you don't find that one thing that compelling, this won't be that much of a fun game. For me, this is a 3.5 out of 5. I like the bidding mechanism, but it also stretches out a larger game around it, and to me the larger game adds a drop of complexity, not that much, very accessible, but not necessarily a ton of added value to decision space. Overall, I enjoy this one, but wish there was a little bit more going on past the reverse bidding mechanism. As far as other game recommendations, first of all, I mentioned it a few times already, but No Thanks. No Thanks to me is the original, I don't know if it is the original, but to me it's the original reverse bidding mechanism where you're simply paying into a pot to avoid bad things happening to you. The game doesn't really try to add on much more to it, it's just that one core mechanism, very quick, very streamlined, and very punishing at the same time. And then if you're looking for more of the tableau building of this game, a Space Base will have a similar feel of tableau building as you slowly add cards to different rows that will activate in different ways. Very different activation mechanism going on, but the same feeling of having your cards get more powerful as you slowly add to them across the course of gameplay. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you found this video helpful, and as always, I hope you have a good one.